Hello, I'm Christopher Walker from Closely Observed English, and in this video I'm going to take you through the whole B2 First speaking paper. A lot of people have been asking for this from me, and since we're entering an exam period right now, I thought maybe now would be a good time to record something. Now, to show you the speaking paper, I needed to enlist the help of a few volunteers. Unfortunately, nobody wanted to volunteer, so here are my two volunteers, Mr. Fox and Mr. Raccoon. Anyway, let's take a look. First of all, let's talk a little bit about the exam and what to expect. When you go into the exam room, there will be you and usually one more candidate. Sometimes there will be two. If you're in the last exam of the day, there might be a group of 3 candidates. Don't worry, nothing really serious will be different. Everything will still work the same way that I'm going to show you. And there will be 2 examiners in the room. There will be one sitting at the same table as you and your partner, and this is the interlocutor. They will be the ones asking you the questions and keeping track of the timing. The other examiner will sit behind them, and that will be the assessor. They will sit and silently judge you from start to finish. They'll say hello, and then they'll say goodbye at the end. But that's all. Okay, so let's get straight into it. The first part of the speaking paper is what we might call the icebreaker, and this helps get you into the exam and gets you speaking. When you come in, you sit down, you'll have a piece of paper, and the examiner or the interlocutor will ask to take that paper, and they'll ask you your name. They'll write it on a piece of paper because it's easy to forget these things when you see 20 people in the same day, and they'll probably make a note to show the start time of that particular exam. And then they'll say something like, hello, where are you from? I'm from Poland. I can't do those voices. I'm from Poland, says Mr. Fox. Thank you. And Mr. Raccoon, where are you from? I'm from Krakow in Poland. There we go. So that first question doesn't really count. They don't want a long description of where you're from. They just want it, I don't know why, just to get the ball rolling, really. Then, for the remainder of this 2 minutes for part 1, they will ask you 1 or 2 questions that are quite easy to answer. For example, Mr. Fox, what do you like to do in the evenings? Well, I like to watch TV. My favourite sort of TV to watch would be science fiction shows like on Netflix. Right now, I'm watching Stranger Things because there's a new season and I really want to know what happens. Thank you. Mr. Raccoon, yes? Do you like watching movies? Not really, no. I find that movies take too much time. I like TV shows. Actually, they take a lot of time as well, but I quite like watching something for 20 minutes and then I can do something else instead. Movies take too long for just one thing. Thank you. And Mr. Raccoon, are you good at any sports? I'm quite good at basketball. I play basketball at school and I'm in the school team. We're not very good, but we enjoy playing together and it's fun to spend time with friends that way. Thank you. And Mr. Fox, what sport would you like to try in the future? I've never tried ice hockey. I'd like to try ice hockey because when it's winter, we have lots of ice rinks in the city. So I've been ice skating and I'm quite good at that. So I would like to try ice hockey because it's a team sport and it's something I can do with my friends. Okay, so that's nice, quick and easy. Takes about 2 minutes. You probably get 1 or 2 questions each. and they will be on any kind of topic connected with this level. So nothing particularly difficult. Don't worry too much about this part of the test because the assessor sitting behind me will be thinking about the paperwork, filling in the details. They'll be listening, but this isn't the key part of the test. To help you prepare, think about your life, think about experiences you have, and think about everything you can in the days leading up to the test itself. In the test, if you don't know what to say, there are a couple of things you can go for. First, think of a direct personal experience of something. Think about a recent thing that you saw. Think about the other side. Think about things that you haven't done. And if you're not sure what to say, just make it up. There isn't a mark for being correct or true or honest. This is a test of English. It's not a test of you and your personality. Okay. So that then takes us on to part 2. And in part 2, we have what we call the individual long turn. Each candidate gets 2 pictures to talk about and a question. It's important that you don't waste time discussing specific details of the picture. It's much better to focus on answering the question as it relates to the pictures. Okay? So if you see 5 people in the pictures, don't waste time talking about what colour their hair is or what colour shirt they're wearing. Answer the question. Okay, so Mr. Fox, here are 2 pictures that show different places. I'd like you to talk about the pictures and say why people might want to visit these places. Okay, and your minute starts now. Okay, so in the first picture, I can see there's this nice big yellow building and it's got a big gate in front of it, so the building must be pretty important. I'm guessing that it might be maybe like a presidential palace or something like that. And I think people would like to visit it because it's a place of importance and they can learn lots of things when they go there. Maybe there's a museum inside that explains the history of the country. The second picture, though, shows a very old building. I think it might be part of a church or maybe a monastery where monks live. And I think people might want to visit something like this because it will be pretty quiet and it will be very nice to go there and just escape from the sounds and the noises of the city. Thank you, Mr. Fox. Mr. Raccoon, which place would you prefer to visit? Well, I do quite like museums, but the picture on the right looks really interesting. We don't have anything like that around here, so I think I would really like to go to that old monastery, the place that Mr. Fox was talking about. There we go. So first, you have the 2 pictures, you talk for a minute about the question, you try to relate everything to the question and justify your answer. Say something and explain why you think that's true. Notice that you won't know the answer. That's not important. The point here is to speculate, to use modal verbs to show that you don't know, or to use other expressions. So saying things like, it's possible that, or it's quite likely that. Then the short response that your partner makes lasts for about 30 seconds, and it just gives them a chance to talk about the same pictures. Mr. Raccoon, it's your turn now. Here are 2 pictures that show people spending time in different places. Talk about the pictures and say why you think the people have chosen to spend time in these places. Okay. Well, in this picture, the one on the left, I can see a woman who's sitting in the sun on a bench, but she's dressed in a coat and long trousers, so it must be pretty cold. I think she's probably sitting here because it's winter, but she wants to warm up in the sun. It's nice sitting in the sun, so that's probably why she wants to do it. In the other picture, though, there are two people sitting together on a wall. I don't know if they're talking. I guess they probably are. Maybe they want to spend time together chatting, but they don't want to go to a cafe where they have to buy a drink. They want to keep things cheap, maybe. Yes, I think that's probably why. Thank you. Mr. Fox, do you like relaxing in the sun? Yeah, sometimes, but not when it's very hot. I don't like it when it's like 30 degrees or something. When it's like that, I like to try and find somewhere in the shade a little bit. That's a lot nicer for me. There we go. So far, so good. Now we come to part 3, which is the first part of the speaking paper where you have to talk with your partner. This is going to be interesting to demonstrate. So the interlocutor will describe a situation and they will ask you to talk about the situation. Now, usually the situation will be relative to your own world experience. You'll be able to talk about it without too much trouble. And the question will either be a how useful or how good sort of scale. So you can say not useful to very useful. Or it might be a good and bad situation. So you can talk about something and say what's good and what's bad about that situation. As well as the question, you'll get 5 prompts. You don't have to talk about all 5, but it's good to be working in the right direction as you talk. Don't go off topic. And try not to make a choice of the most important thing straight away, because that question comes next. So, here are some things that people use to help them learn a new language, and a question for you to discuss. First, you have a few seconds to look at the question. Now, talk together and say what would be good and bad about these ways of learning a new language. Do you want to go first? Sure, okay. I'll talk about lessons with a teacher. When you're starting a new language, I think that lessons with a teacher might not be a great idea because it'll be really expensive and all you do is learn how to count like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something like that. Yeah, I see what you mean. But maybe having lessons with a teacher would be good because you can start to plan your studies and the teacher will know how to help you plan. That's a good point. What about using a mobile phone app? Something like Duolingo, I suppose. I use something like that all the time. And it's really good because it only takes 5 minutes a day and I can do it when I'm waiting for my bus. You take the bus, do you? Yes. That's good, but what can you learn in 5 minutes a day? I think you need a bit more time to focus on something than just 5 minutes on Duolingo. So maybe that would be one of the problems with it. I think you might be right, actually, yes. But if you spend a lot of time doing it, it could really kickstart your learning in this other language. Yeah, I think that's true. Let's look at going to that country next. I think going to the country is a great way to get a feel for what a different language sounds like, because you hear lots of people talking it. So if you go to Germany, everyone speaks German really, so you get to hear lots of German from people. That's very true. I think that's a really good point. But you might not learn very much from it, because nobody's trying to speak the sort of language you can understand. They're just talking to each other naturally, and they're certainly not going to explain to you what they mean. I hadn't thought of it that way. Good. Now, please talk for a minute and say which of these ways you think is the most effective way of learning a new language. What do you think? Oh, I don't know. I think maybe lessons with a teacher would be good because they can teach you a lot very quickly and it helps you with motivation because you'll be more motivated to use the lessons if you're paying for them. I think you might be right. I'm looking at the other options, using a phone app. It's cheap, it's easy, it doesn't take much time, but you don't maybe learn as much as you do with the teacher. We didn't talk about reading a dictionary. That's a good way to develop your language maybe, but I don't know about learning in the first place. So yes, I agree with you. Brilliant. Okay, so part 3 then. We start with the discussion, going around the points. You talk for about 2 minutes there, and at the end of those 2 minutes the interlocutor will stop you and ask you the follow-up question, and you have 1 minute to decide. You don't have to decide on the same thing together. It's about negotiating. Okay? In the earlier part, the 2 minutes, it's really good if you can spend some time initiating the discussion by presenting something and talking about your opinion, and also responding to what the other person says. If it's always that you agree, that's okay. You can show your agreement, but don't simply say, yes, I agree. You'll notice that when Mr. Fox and Mr. Raccoon happened to agree, they supported the original idea with an extra explanation or with an example. And when they were going from good to bad, they did it in a nice, polite way as well. So that was really nice. So that takes about 3 minutes in total, and that takes us then on to the final part. In part 4, the topic that was introduced in part 3 is then developed further, it's expanded, and you have a kind of extended discussion. You don't see the questions, you have to listen to the interlocutor giving you the questions, and this part lasts for about 4 minutes up until the end of the exam. I'll give you a little demonstration now, but I'm not going to keep talking for the whole 4 minutes. I'll do 2 questions so you get a feel for it, and then I'll give you a couple of tips to help you through the speaking paper. Do you think it is easy or difficult to learn a new language? That's a good question. I think it depends on the language, doesn't it? Oh yes, definitely. If you're trying to learn a language that's like your own, it would be a lot easier. I know a lot of people who learn Czech because they're Polish, and it was easy. But I also know a few people who wanted to learn Korean because they watched Squid Game. Oh yeah, that must have been really difficult for them to learn Korean. The writing system is different, the language is all different. I don't think many words are the same, are they? No, that's exactly right. The words are so different, you have to learn everything. Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you. Do you think it's possible to learn a new language when you get older? Oh, I don't know about that. I hope so, because I like learning languages and I want to do it when I'm 50. But I don't think it will be as easy as when I was 15. That's true. I think that children learn languages quite quickly, don't they? I think they pick them up pretty quickly. But when we become adults, we know how to learn, so that gives us an advantage. I think so, yes. If you're motivated as an adult, maybe because you need to learn the language for your job, then you're going to do a better job of learning that language. I couldn't agree more. Okay, I wanted to finish the example with that. Should you say stop phrases like I couldn't agree more? I think it's okay. It doesn't always sound very natural, but I don't think it's a big problem. The most important thing is to take what you hear and develop it further. When you do the speaking exam, there will be 5 marks given to you. One of those marks is given by the interlocutor. They give you a mark called Global Achievement. And this is basically a summary of your skills relative to the level. And if you're at the level, you'd be looking at probably 3 out of 5 for that. The other 4 areas are assessed by the assessor, obviously. The first is called discourse management, and this is your ability to talk in paragraphs. So you introduce an idea, you develop the idea, and you finish, you move on. It's also a test of how quickly you can respond. So if you take a long time thinking about what you want to say before you even start, if you hesitate a lot, that's not so good for your discourse management. So it's good to get right in and start speaking straight away. The second thing that they talk about is interactive communication. Interactive communication, first of all, in parts 1 and 2, is how well you answer the question that's given to you. So in part 1, you have to understand the simple questions the examiner asks and answer in a way that is appropriate. And in part 2, with the pictures, you have to understand the question at the top of the page and try to answer it. In parts 3 and 4, interactive communication is about initiating or starting the discussion and building from what your partner says. A big part of speaking is listening. Next, we have pronunciation. At a basic level, can I understand you as the examiner listening to the candidate? Are you using pronunciation that is generally right for the language? Do you say teacher instead of teacher, for example? Beyond the word level pronunciation, we can also think about sentences and what you find in dialogue. So if you agree, you could show that with your voice. Oh yes, I completely agree with you there. It shows in the way you say the sentence. Not, oh yes, I totally agree with you. That sounds sarcastic and it doesn't show that you agree. If you disagree, you go, yes, but, and we make the but longer and stronger. That's all part of pronunciation. And then finally, tucked over in the corner, there's 1 mark given for language. That covers both grammar and vocabulary. It looks at your range of language. How much different language do you use? And your control. Now, I can't help you much with control. That's something you have to work on by yourself. But with range, I can make a good suggestion. Basically, when you talk in a general way about something, you don't use very sophisticated language. But when you start talking in a more specific or personal way, you do. So, for example, think back to the question Mr. Fox had at the start about the sport he would like to try in the future. If he just said something general, like, I would like to try ice skating, or ice hockey it was, wasn't it? If he just says that, I'd like to try ice hockey, that's very general and it's not very sophisticated language. Adding a little bit more specific detail, talking about ice hockey being on an ice rink and about how ice hockey is a team game. This adds a little bit more to the range of language that you use. Another way that you can develop the range here is to consider the opposite of a point. If somebody says, learning with a teacher is a good idea, you could say what would happen if you didn't learn with a teacher. Maybe you wouldn't know where to start. That shows good range of language. Okay, so in this video I've talked about the different stages in the speaking paper. We've looked at what sort of things you need to do, and we've seen some examples thanks to my volunteers. If you've got any questions about what you need to do in the speaking paper, post them in the comments below and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. And if you've got a speaking exam coming up soon, all I can say now is good luck. For Closely Observed English, I'm forgetting the name of my own channel, dear me. Closely Observed English, I'm Christopher Walker. Goodbye.